Dez not holding back. Do you think this is going to impact his free agency?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think you could argue that he was right about a few things, specifically the play calling in Dallas. Like, that's not a new accusation about what Linehan was doing down there. And I think plenty of people have said Romo really helped in that with making at the line audible. So I think that's probably pretty accurate. And some of the behavior of Jerry Jones recently, like, you could argue some of that is pretty clueless in dredging up this anthem stuff when it didn't need to be. So I don't think that he's wrong necessarily, and I don't think he's showing a new side of himself. Like, people knew this about Dez Bryant. I think some of the arguments against having Dez Bryant have already been out there, and these tweets aren't changing necessarily how people felt about him. So if people weren't afraid of him before, these tweets aren't going to make them afraid of him now.
I think it does. I disagree with you, Dominic. First of all, I want to go back to December. We were on this show arguing about Dez Bryant and whether he should take a pay cut with the Cowboys. I said he could because I thought the team would cut him because of the decline in his performance last season, which, by the way, is the #1 reason, forget all this other stuff, why Dez Bryant is not on a team. He had the lowest yards per reception of his career last year, something like 26 overall amongst wide receiver in yardage. He was obviously less successful at getting separation. All of that is true. Everyone saw it play out on the field. Now there's this added element where, you're right, we've always known he's a dramatic guy, he's an emotional guy, but the stuff about Sean Lee and Travis Frederick, because the Stephen Jones, accusations, I think that was merited. I don't think Stephen Jones should have said what he said, and I think Dez Bryant was perfectly within his rights to defend himself. But calling out Sean Lee, if I'm on another team, I'm looking at that, and that's the thing I think that catches my eye. Sean Lee, a guy who has a great reputation around the NFL as a leader, who then comes out and actually addresses the comments, credit to him. That, to me, more than the other stuff, might hurt his chance of signing with another team.
So first, I'd like to at least challenge the idea that he's fallen off as a player. Like, I understand that his stats have gone down and he's aging and he's come off of some injuries, but his ability to perform on the field, his statistics, Mina, you're not a football novice by any stretch. You know that there are not a lot of other factors that contribute to a receiver, in particular, not having the high numbers. So I'm not going to argue that Dez Bryant is still peak Dez Bryant, but he said so, Jerry Jones said so. They all still believe that he can contribute to a team in the league. I do agree with you about the Sean Lee point. Anytime you throw teammates under the bus, particularly guys who have not taken a shot at you, like, I understand and I appreciated him going back at what Stephen Jones said, because Stephen Jones should have, frankly, kept Dez Bryant's name out of his mouth at that point. Like, there was no reason to bring up Dez Bryant, a man who's looking for a job. But to that same point, I can't hold that position and then say it's okay for Dez Bryant to then bring up Sean Lee and Fredericks, even though they haven't brought him up. Like, that would scare me as a teammate, honestly. Like, I don't know that I want to bring somebody in who's willing to do something like that, but I'm not sure what would scare me as a front office guy. If I need a receiver who's going to be able to make a play on third down, and if I believe that Dez Bryant can do that, then I'm going to go ahead and get him.
It's the combination of the decline in performance and these concerns that I think will, strike fear in the heart of front offices. Because you're right, front offices, they'll forgive anything, right, if a guy is talented enough. Antonio Brown could come out and say Le'Veon Bell is the worst human alive, and another team wouldn't care. But we're talking about a guy whose decline has actually been going on for a while. You're correct. Statistics year to year can vary. But this is something we've seen in Dez Bryant for a while, the decline in catch rate, some of the issues in getting separation, which is, by the way, forget statistics. That's something I've seen with my own two eyes. He's still a usable NFL player. He's still, great at breaking tackles. His catch radius is still there. He's still a physical red zone threat, but he's not, one of the top receivers in the NFL by any means, which is, again, the #1 reason why he's not signed. Forget all of this other stuff.
Right, and I think it depends on a team. I think we both agree that the Packers would be a good place to go, because while Aaron Rodgers is better than Tony Romo, they're similar quarterbacks in that they are smart at the line of scrimmage and extremely accurate. And I think Dez Bryant could perform well in a situation like that, which is why I don't know that the teams who are interested in him are the teams that, like, we've heard the Browns have discussed it. I'm not sure that that's a good fit. I think that he needs to go to a place with an established quarterback, with established veterans, because I don't think if the issues with him throwing his teammates under the bus are a real thing to be concerned about. You go to an established team, that's not something you have to worry about. And frankly, Mina, you know this, there are lots of beefs in locker rooms. Like, having a guy, like, this game is about men trying to hurt each other, essentially. So guys saying something that hurts another man's feelings, like, as someone who's been in plenty of locker rooms, like, that's not going to stop a team from performing. Like, I've been on teams where people had a fight, like a physical fist fight in the locker room the day before a game, and then they go out and pass and hand the ball to each other as if nothing happened. So I'm not going to lose any sleep over a teammate talking trash.
but it usually stays in the locker room,
Yeah.
right? And you know that, Dominique. That's what's
That's
different
true.
about this situation.
Mina, I have a question for you. Do you feel like, true or not, we all know what happened with T.O. and he was considered a cancer at the end, regardless of his talent. Do you feel like Dez is entering that territory now?
You know, this doesn't help. I never felt like that before these comments, Molly, because, you know, there were some whispers and anonymous quotes here and there. What was unique to me about this story is Sean Lee coming out and saying he didn't hold himself accountable. He was a bad teammate. That's what's unusual, because anonymous quotes, you know, we can get them from anywhere, and I don't put as much stock in them. But for a player to come out and say that about Dez Bryant, put his name on that and defend himself, that's the kind of thing that catches other teams' eyes when they're looking at his situation.
But he was reacting to Dez Bryant saying essentially that they were bad teammates. So it's he said at this point. So if you're gonna say that about Dez Bryant, you have to at least consider the possibility that maybe those guys were the bad teammates, and Dez Bryant is a passionate guy who plays hard, and his emotion is valuable for an offensive team, right?
You don't believe that. I mean, come on.
I'm saying
you know,
you don't have any more proof. You don't have any more proof that Dez Bryant is a bad teammate than you do that Sean Lee. It's the he said thing, right?
Right. Well, this is, like I said, this is the tip of the spear with Dez. And I'm not saying he's a bad teammate, but the idea that he is not toxic or at least divisive in the locker room is something that has been around. Again, anonymous quotes, stories, stuff. But then to have a guy put his name on that, you're right, Dominique, it was in defense of himself. I think it does add a little bit of credence to some of those rumors. And we talked about teams around the league who might be looking at him, thinking about him. I think you were correct in mentioning it would take a strong quarterback. I also think it takes a really strong wide receiver core. Antonio Brown recruited him, which I don't think really makes sense. They're too stacked in Pittsburgh. But I like the idea of a team with an established number one saying, okay, we'll take you, Dez, as a red zone threat, but this is our guy. And you know that. And if Dez was accepting of that role, I think he could still add to an NFL team.